And that's the way the ministry and the church plan started. Working in the streets, the people we reach now start the churches, and when the churches start missions, and it's that endless cycle that does never end.
Well, each and every week, we love to bring you information about great ministries and mission work across the country and around the globe. And recently was directed to a ministry that I know you're going to want to hear more about. I'll let our guest fill you in on all the details. Carlos Montoya and Rossy Montoya join us today. They lead La Roca Ministries, and I'll let them tell you a little more about it as we begin. But first, greetings to both of you. Thank you for your time today. We appreciate you joining us on Missions Today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Carlos, why don't you start? Just give us an overview of your ministry.
Well, the overview is basically helping people in need and and sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ, which we've seen just transformation of people's lives. People who are just down at the bottom of the pit, where a lot of people said there was no hope for these people. And outreaching for years and working with these people, ministry has just grown and blossomed in so many different ways and different directions. So now we have two churches, one at the Tijuana dump, where we missions there, and we have people staff 724, and we give drinking water, bathing water, food to the workers and to the children of the dump. But of course, we share the gospel. We have cell groups there among the little houses, reaching to people. So yeah, we're there 724. We don't just go in and go back out. We have staff there 24.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the ministry, you're both in Tijuana as well as is it the San Diego area as well? You do things on both sides of the border or primarily in Mexico?
It's primarily in Mexico. We're trying to expand a little bit more and doing a little bit more in the United States, but it's primarily in Mexico.
Okay. We're going to come back to La Roca because you are doing such amazing work, but I'd love to hear your stories. Both of you came from different parts of the globe, and you found each other, or the Lord helped you find each other, and you got this ministry together, and we're going to talk more about that in just a moment. But Rossy, could we start with you? Tell us a little bit about your growing up years and how you came to Christ and how you ultimately came to America.
Yes, I come in from a really broken family. So when I was 10 years old, I started working to help my mother because we was 7 in the house. So I started working in the fields, and that's the way I paid my school all my life. And when I was 18 years old, I have the American dream in my heart. I want to go to United States. So when I turned 20, I asked my mother, I said, Mother, I'm going to United States. And she said, you are crazy. I said, please bless me. I don't even know what I was talking about bless, because that time you don't know God, right? So I always say, please bless me, Mother, so I can go. And she said, no, you're too young. How you will cross the border by yourself? And I said, I don't know, please bless me. So I pushed my mother to bless me. And so one night she said, okay, I will bless you and you can go. So I decided to find somebody to help me to cross the border when I was 20 years old. And then I crossed the border. And 3 days later, when I arrived to the United States, I met my husband. So that time was not my husband, of course. So we start living together, because in that time we had no Christ in our lives. And after that, like 3 years later, he became a Christian and I was not a Christian. So we got separated and I was pregnant, 3 months pregnant. So for me, it was like, okay, it was a journey. And then after that, I had my baby and I started screaming to God, if you're real, be real in my life. And then a year later, God came to my life and saved me and transforming my life. So I have a really broken heart because from the background I have, because my father left my mother with 6 kids. My mother was very angry. So she always was bitter to us, And then to me, it was like a pain in my heart. And then I started asking God to forgive. And before that, he did it. He did it. So 8 months when God saved me, and then we married 8 months later. God said, okay, Rose, it's time for you to go back to United States, to Mexico. I said, oh, God, I crossed the rivers at nighttime, and then you send me back to Mexico again. But God had a purpose. Since that I'm here with my husband serving the Lord almost for 28
years.
28 years.
So Rossy, you came from Mexico, and Carlos, you came from a different direction a little bit. You came from Costa Rica. Tell us a bit about your story.
Well, I was born in Costa Rica, and my mother brought me to the United States at 5.5 years old. So I grew up in the United States in San Diego County, basically in the South Bay area. But as my wife said, I got converted first, and before that conversion, though, my mother, of course, was not a Christian. She had a lot of hatred and bitterness in her life. So she got married like 6 different times. I had 6 different stepfathers, which all across which verbal abuse, physical abuse, drunkenness, and so forth. So I got to see that. So I kind of grew up with bitterness, and I grew up with hatred, resentment towards my mother, resentfulness towards the opposite sex, and so on, which got me in a lot of trouble and probably could ended me up in prison very easily. I could be, in prison for rape easily, but God spared me from that. And during that process, when I got converted, just God healed me of all that bitterness. God healed me of that hatred. God healed. Just a complete healing took place in my heart, my mind, my spirit. And then 9 months later, God put in my heart, says, "I want you in Mexico." And I was brand new believer behind the years. I mean, couldn't get any greener than that. I had no formal training, and so I said, "Okay, God, I have no idea how that looks like, but so be it." So I started. I heard about this radio station. I was listening to this Christian radio station, and there I heard an advertisement about toys for a Christmas drive of December of 1995. I applied to it. I mean, I called them and I said, well, okay, I'll be there this Thursday. So I started going every Thursday, October, November, December. And there I found myself saying, wow, I can't do this just one day a week. And God was just impelling me to go full time. And until I finally did. I don't know how much more in depth you want me to go into, but in January of 96, I left our business. I just put it in boxes, and I went in full time. I just trusting in the Lord and His guidance.
I want to go back for a moment. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. I want to go back for a moment to y'all's story. How did you meet? And once you became a Christian, Carlos, were you specifically influential in Rossy's conversion, or how did that come about?
Well, we met, as my wife said, 3 days later, she met me, and how we met was at my mother's house. My mother's house, almost the top half of the second story burnt down. So my mother said, well, let's hire people to help us with the cleanup, and we'll save some money. So my mother hired 3 young ladies, and Rosie was one of them. And real quickly, my eyes was impelled to her, and we proceeded that. I guess she didn't last very long, but I think 3 days later, she left. But I got her telephone number and called her, and we went on our first date, and just one thing led to another, where we became a couple. and and she started helping me with our fleet, kind of like the swabbing business. And during that time is when I got converted. And I know it's not easy, but I was compelled in the sense of, well, I'm a believer now, and she's not a believer, and God just brought that conviction very strongly that we needed to separate. We separated, and of course that was a difficult time for my wife. But I kept on praying, says God, if she should be my wife, change her heart like you did mine, and not just change her heart, but give her the heart for lost souls and for the missions. So time went by, and as my wife said, she got converted. We took her and got baptized in our church. We got married at the Spring Valley Community Church here in Spring Valley. And as she said, my heart was already in Tijuana. I was already working in Tijuana, and God convicted her of having to go back and make peace with her father. So it was a perfect fit. I mean, we just came back to Tijuana not knowing exactly where, when, or what. We just trusted in the Lord that that's where He wanted us, and that's how we started.
Rossy, let's talk a little bit about that conversion experience for you as you came to know Christ. Obviously, your life changed as Carlos's did as well. What was it about the ministry opportunities? Where did that come along, and what did you feel like God was telling you or encouraging both of you to do in those early days?
Well, before we came to Mexico, I remember just being in my room waiting for my husband because he always was in ministry. So I just pray. I say, God, I don't know what you want me to do. I don't know if I'm capable to do it. And then he always talk about children's and men's of the rehab center. And I was like, but you're talking about guys in the streets, you know? So for me, it was like, what are you talking about? And when I remember before we start making plans to come to Mexico, he says, how about if we buy a house and we can bring all the children in our house, and then we can start an orphanage? To me, was like, oh, wow, but that's a lot of work, you know? So when we came to Mexico, my husband invited me to go to
Juvenile hall.
juvenile hall. And then that's when I find out that God want me to be there for the girls. And then that was like, wow, I find my ministry there, you know. So I say, God, I'm capable to hear, to pray, to give encouraging words for those girls. And then that's how I said, okay, God. So I was attending to youth ministry, jail ministry for 2 years. And then I said, Bloom, whatever you guys want me, God, whatever you want me to do, I will do it. You know, so.
So you were able to use probably some of your own personal
Yes.
background and circumstances to
Yes.
connect with some of those young ladies that were going through some
Yes, because
challenging
you
times.
hear the stories that was my father's fault or my mother's fault. I mean, and I like some girls that was in kidnapping, selling drugs, stuff like that. To me, it was like, wow, I never heard that before. But when I realized everything is about love, when you don't receive love in your house, you can make a really bad mistakes, you know. So I started loving those girls, crying with them. And every Wednesday, I was attending to the ministry. My husband said, why are you crying again? I said, it's because the story hurts my heart all the time. And my husband said, you have to be stronger. You cannot cry every Wednesday. And I said, I can. It's so sad. And so now to me, I realized that, oh, wow, my mother was not too bad. You know, when I realized all the bad things. And most of the girls that was in jail because the parents was selling drugs and used them to selling drugs or prostitution or stuff like that. To me, was like totally new. I impacted my life was so much. And I said, I have to do something for those girls. And I always come and say, my husband, honey, can we open a house for those girls? And my husband, we don't have money yet. We have to do, okay, we can bring it to our house. So every time when the girls that was ready to go home, the director of the jail said, they cannot go home because that's the problem. Don't worry, I can take it to my house. So I bring almost all the time girls in our house.
Wow. Wow. Carlos, when did La Roca start officially, and what ministry did you start with, and which ones have you added as the time has gone along?
Well, in March of 2000, we bought our first property, which is now our Recovery Discipleship Ranch. And that was after years of working, several years working in the streets of Tijuana, reaching out to the men and women and children. But that was the very first ministry there. And after that, of course, we started with the shelter at the Red Light District, which is FM La Cahuila and FM Martinez. And then from there, we started the men's shelter at the same location. And then shortly after that, we started the first La Roca Church at the shelter. Because we're already reaching the people, we're already counseling the people, and we're trying to set the people in different churches. And most churches, sadly, just were not prepared to work with these people. So we found ourselves asking ourselves, well, we're doing half the work already. Let's do the other half. Let's just open up and start a church. So we did, and then so we were doing it all. Then after that, we opened up, my wife and some others that were with us started a prayer walk in the Red Light District. And that came out of great need for single moms with children. So we opened up the House of Grace, which was for single mother with children. And that was a great success. I mean, in the sense of that we had the house full of moms and children. But after maybe for a couple of years or year or so forth, several moms start leaving their children behind, which put us in a great dilemma legally if we cannot continue to bring more women to the location with children without their moms. So if something was to happen to the child, then we'll be liable for it. So we decided to transform it into an orphanage, which was like 15 years ago. And so now we have the orphanage. And after that, we opened up the Women's Academy, which is to help women get off prostitution. And we do that through counseling, prayer, of course, Bible studies with the women. But we share with them several trades like English classes, sewing classes, bakery classes, nursing classes, something to stimulate in them that, wow, I can do something else besides just prostitution. And in the year and a half that this location has been open, I think over 12 women have already left prostitution and have been able to go back into the workforce. So that's a good tribute to my wife and the team that we have there. It's hard work, but we take on that which is difficult, and we know that if, as Romans says, if God's with us, who can be against us? And we can do all things through Christ to strengthen us. And that's just our focus. Did I leave anything else? Oh yeah, and then shortly after that, then we start expanding. God blessed us, and we started going out of Tijuana into the state of Sonora, which we've been there now, I think like 6 years.
2013.
Since 2013, where now we have a church plant, and we're reaching out towards native groups up the mountain, and we've been able to advance into 5 different groups. We have 2 church plants there now, and continue to doing like a small mini La Roca, a shelter, Bible classes, church planting, youth, kids, and so that's just been growing. After that, we went to Oaxaca. Juan Perez and his wife Olga, they met in the ministry, and Olga is from this native group, and that's one of the reasons we were allowed to go into. and it's the last group on the top of this mountain. It's 4 hours of swerving and to get to this location. They say not even the Spanish got there. Not even the Spanish entered that location. It was so far and so high.
So we serving.
So we're serving the children there. We started working with the children to get the confidence of the people. It's very conservative, very strict, very hardworking people, but they're lacking love. Right? They don't transmit love to one each other. They don't hold hands. They don't kiss in public. They don't hug their children. They don't tell their kids how we love you. They grew up in a very harsh environment of work, because they have to. So we're bringing and we're winning the confidence of now the men. And now this month we're having our first men's Bible study. After gaining the trust and the confidence of the people there. So things going on, and then shortly after that, like 3 years ago, we sent a missionary to Chiapas, which he's out there now starting with the kids club and reaching out towards men in recovery centers with the hope of opening up a church there soon. And that's the way we've the ministry and the church plan started, working in the streets. The people we reach now start the churches, and when the churches start missions, and it's that endless cycle that does never end.
Yeah, that's incredible. Thank you for sharing an incredible story of what God has done. A couple of quick questions. First, Rossy, you've had the opportunity to work with these young ladies, and Carlos said some have actually come out of prostitution. They've been given a chance to do work. What does that mean to you as you look back on your early years that were really tough, and then this American dream, and now seeing your life touch these young women's lives? What does that mean to you?
That's blessed to me. It's sometimes it's amazing to see how God can work in people, and everything is about love. You know, when you share that to somebody who was empty like me, and then you say, Jesus loves you, and he died for you, and he did it for me, and he changed my life and my heart because I was in pain just like you. And when you see that, when they trust and they receive that, it's like, God, thank you. Thank you. Because it's no greater love.
Carlos, you were not a believer in your early years, probably never thought about being in ministry. As you look at God changing your own life, changing your wife's life, beginning this ministry, and now seeing it grow as you've just described through the years to the top of the mountain and to the children and the men and the women. What do you think as you look back on what God has done through your work?
It's just been an amazing journey. I always testify God's faithfulness, God's goodness, God opening up doors to those who trust in him. Don't always need to be formally trained, but just to put your trust in him. And if you put your trust in him, he opens up doors that we could never imagine or even could do ourselves. And I say it because I didn't get formally trained. It's not like I got sent out by a church. I did later on as I proven myself to those around me. Like many have said, hey, yeah, support me. I want to open an orphanage. And a lot of churches that have gone burnt. They've gone given money, and the people take off of the money, and the orphanage never got built. So I knew that being a kid, or being a new kid on the block, you might say, I had to prove myself, and I didn't mind doing so. And so thank God we now have some faithful supporters that have believed us and seen the change and have been stood by our sides these 28 years. But it's just, what can I say? It's God. Like you said, I never thought about becoming a believer in the first place, at least a pastor or at least a missionary. None of this. I never had it. I never planned it. never had a strategy, because a lot of people ask me that. Hey, Carlos, what was your strategy? I had none. Carlos, what was your plan? I had none. So what did you have? I had Christ. That's all. And I just pray to Christ, give me the sensibility to your guidance so that I may be able to walk through the doors that you open up faithfully. And that's why our words is God's faithful, God's good. In the bottom show, that's it. God's good, God is faithful to those who trust in him.